Cool.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today, I am joined by Brian Hallas. My name is Gummy Nichols, and I'm here representing Alpha Arts Gallery in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And we're lucky enough to have Brian Hallas join us for an interview to talk about some of the works he has contributed to our upcoming show, Refracted, Shade and Light. It's a photography exhibition here at Alpha. And so we're just going to learn more about his process and his submissions that he kindly brought to our gallery. So thank you so much, Brian, for
It's my
joining
pleasure.
me.
Yes, I'm happy to meet you.
I'm happy to meet you too. To start off, I think I just want to ask if you could just give a brief description about the work that you are showcasing at this exhibition.
I have to remember it first. Most of what is in the show was sort of late last year work. It kind of I think when I sent it in, I sort of wanted to represent because my work has changed over the past year. So I wanted to sort of show that. And then when I found out the name of the show itself, I sort of tailored what is going to appear, at least physically, to that. And it's really just what I tend to do is post 3 images a day on Instagram. And so I tend to do things in 3s. And but a lot of what I show at Alpha has been pulled from groups of 3s. Just I tend to like some better than others. And so it's basically just a representation of what I've been doing over the past half year or more. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's all really, really thought-provoking photographs. I particularly have really enjoyed them. I particularly have enjoyed your abstracted flower works that are the distorted ones that you have showcased on the walls. What I had written down in my notes when looking at them is they kind of act as tessellations or kaleidoscopes. And I was just wondering, through this collection of flowers, why you decided to choose flowers to manipulate and how exactly you go about distorting them.
I think the flowers chose me. When I started taking photographs with any level of seriousness, I was a school teacher, and actually I had spent most of my life in the theater. And then when I started teaching, I didn't have much energy to do anything but do something like take pictures. So I would just take I tend to look down a lot. So I'd take all this esoteric stuff that you see as you, or don't see as you walk through your day. And when COVID began, that environment shrank, obviously, because we were all basically staying close to home. And so there wasn't a lot around that attracted me in a way. Flowers and plants started. It's something at one time in my life, I will never take pictures of flowers because everybody does, and then here I am. And so during the beginning of COVID, I just started taking pictures of the plants around my house and then just playing with them. And in the September of 2020, I began working in a nursery with plants. And so I have an unlimited supply of subject matter when I want to. It drives my bosses crazy. I'll be supposed to be working, I'm walking around taking pictures of everything because it's much more fun. And then what I tend to do with those, I'm a kind of a firm believer that there is no bad picture. So you can take anything and turn it into something interesting, even if it's not, the greatest image in the world. It still can be made much more interesting than like, oh, that's blurry or that's, whatever. And what I tend to do, and what I did with a lot of the work that's in the show, is take an image and make a couple of different layers of it, maybe a color image, a black and white image, maybe a sketched kind of image, and superimpose them, and then play around with filters and things, and then sometimes take the result of that and add it into the mix, so that there are all these sort of weird layers. And basically it is there to it's sort of my video games, where I just keeps me from maybe doing video games. I will spend time, this is what I do on my iPhone, basically. Well, not the only thing, but a lot of it. And so I tend to basically everything I do is done on iPhone, taking the pictures and using apps where I've created different settings that I'll use fairly regularly, or just use, knowing what an app can do, I'll just go and use that as turns into be one of the layers. So I'll take like a drawing type app and use that kind of texture as one of the layers, which automatically changes things. Sometimes I'll throw a color or something of color underneath it, has nothing to do with the picture itself, and that through the filtering tends to change the image completely, and tends to do things like draw out colors, textures, shapes, etc., or hide them, so that depending on the image, that's how it works out. That basically it's always a surprise, and from there, I usually will try maybe 10, 15, 20 different apps or layers or whatever, that potential layers. And to do the 3 into Instagram, I will then just pick my 3 favorites and post those. And those tend to be the ones that I then also pass along to a gallery show or something like that, because I know, people do tend to like them. So I'm already somewhat have a stamp of approval in that sense,
Yeah, that's super interesting. And as I'm listening to you, it reminds me it's kind of a different approach to art making, as opposed to bottom up. It's kind of top down, like you're uncovering the work as
Oh
opposed
yeah,
to
yeah, in a way. Oh, interesting. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking it's very cool to the different, it's a different way of looking almost.
Well, part of what it is I don't have any expectation. I'm not trying to create to something or with an idea in mind, other than I kind of know what these things will do. But there's no pre-planning, like, oh, I have, if you're gonna paint, chances are you'll have a preconception to some degree of what you're going to do, because that's what it leads to. And in this, I really don't have any solid preconceptions of the end result of any given image. So I'm not like, I do know what colors and things will work better than others, because some colors definitely work better than others. Whites are really good for this sort of thing. Orange is not quite so good. It's green's definitely not really great. But that's the sort of thing that I use. That's the body of knowledge, the vast body of knowledge that I use. And that's as far as I will project ahead, because I really don't know what it's going to do once the things get layered. So yeah.
Wonderful. It's very cool. And you also mentioned that about your past work experience. I noticed that you have a history in working in film, music, theater production. And so I was just wondering how that path has influenced what you're doing now with your photography.
In a way, I was a sound designer mostly in theater, although I started out as an actor. I went to Emerson as an actor, and then ended up with jobs that I kind of always loved, sound and music, and I parlayed that into working with people, and it turned into being sound design, which is perfectly fine because theater is a very collective experience and collaborative experience. Photography is very often the antithesis of that. Um, but what I did in sound, I worked for a guy named Ping Chong for a long time. He just retired after 50 years of working in the theater in New York City. Just last week he retired, or maybe it's tomorrow. The work I did with him is in a sense very similar to the work I do as a photographer, and it would be layering sound, distorting sound, filtering sound. You might take a high pitch something and slow it way down, and then it becomes something else completely. And there's some recognizable aspects to it and some utterly unrecognizable aspects to it, which I think is the same thing in my photography. I think the through line, in a sense, though, is more the fact that I guess I gotta keep making art somehow. It just doesn't stop.
Yeah. Wow,
It
it
has
is.
its own life.
Yeah, no, truly. And seems a very clear connection between the layering of sound and the layering.
Yeah, it really is. It feels the same in a lot of ways too, just the way the quote work of it has this similar, that they both have similar elements of how to put things together and what and the fact that if you're going to do something like add a filter, it's going to change it, and it's always a surprise. Even in sound, it was always a surprise. Like, ooh, I like this. Let's play it for him or them or whoever and see what they think. And very often it was, kind of the right thing. Or if it wasn't the right thing, it at least led us to the right thing. And
Well,
now I'm the only one who decides.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that you say in your artist statement that I read that I really enjoyed was that you said that your tastes are stimulated by an eclectic spectrum of artists, an array of art forms. Could you just touch maybe on some of the artists and eras that inspire you in art or photography?
Oh, sure. Oddly enough, there aren't a lot of photographers in that group, although I always want to go see photography exhibitions. So I should have a list of people that I really, photography fascinates me. And it's really, so many people do so many different things with it that, it isn't like I have inspirations in a specific sense, like, oh, that's a great abstract artist that I would like to be. Mine just happens to be abstract because if I tried for literal, it wouldn't necessarily work out that well. But most of my influences throughout my life have come from music and film. And I saw the Beatles when in Boston in 1966. And, from that era on, through the 80s, 70s, 80s, just some great music that constantly inspires me because I listen to people, David Bowie or Talking Heads, or, it's Stevie Wonder, a lot of funk, a lot of soul. And that feeds in, but it feeds in on a sort of a lower river that runs through me, as opposed to the one up on the surface. And films, the 70s were an amazing time for film. Because they broke up the whole system. And, there's just some great people from that era, Robert Altman, and, Peter Bogdanovich, all sorts of people that just also continue to inspire me, even though both of those have passed away. But the work that these people did excited me. And that sort of, as I say, feeds the deeper river, the one under the crust, if I may. say. Um, and instead of necessarily saying, oh, I want to go make a something like so and so. So that doesn't really answer your question in a way, because I'm not giving you names. but books inspire me. Stephen King. I'm a latecomer to Stephen King. I love Stephen King. Yeah, 11/22/63 is probably one of the best books I've ever read, and that's not your typical Stephen King novel, but it's the one that got me into him. And he's totally inspiring. He's just as a human being. In fact, the guy I worked with in theater and he both got a Presidential Medal of the Arts in the same ceremony, which is kind of cool. So I'm like a separation and a half. Yeah, so it's art is just it just feeds me. And but there are people today, movies today. I unfortunately watch a lot of television these days, mostly movies, because I don't have I don't have regular TV. So there's just always people who are like, wow, you're doing that with that. And that will inspire me, rather than, because everybody makes junk every now and again too. So you're not always going to be inspired by everything somebody does, but that also is inspiring, because you realize, oh, it's not all so precious. We all do things, and sometimes they work out the way you want them to. Sometimes they work out the way you want them to, and nobody else wants them to. I mean,
That's it's a great point to mention that there's more than one kind of artistic inspiration you can have. My dad's a painter, and he listens to music, and that's when he paints, and that's the only inspiration he claims to have. Anything that's happening in media, really, just in what you're consuming, somehow weasels its way through.
Yes, it does. Exactly.
So it's really, those are all really great. Stephen King, one of
my
too.
Oh, great. Oh, cool. Yeah. Back in the 70s when he first came out, I was like, oh, another time, I'll never read Stephen King. And of course, now he's like one of my favorite authors. There you go.
Couldn't fight it.
As my son would tell me, Dad, you always say never. So never say never. Because you're always going back on what you say never about.
Truly. It's good advice. Another thing that you mentioned in your artist statement that I really held on to is you said that your primary goal in art making is to entertain yourself. And I think that's so wonderfully put. And I think especially in this day and age, I think a lot of artists are kind of losing that as a priority in art making, as their own goal. So I was just wondering if you could touch on that, if you agree with that, or your just process of entertaining yourself first.
Well, I think the situation you just described has always existed. That there are people who want to retain or work to retain that innocence, maybe, of just pure making stuff with no expectation. But I think a lot of people throughout time have had to have put the business of it, maybe for want of a better term as well, as the pathway. And so I don't think it's necessarily generational. I do think that it's just some people work it's left brain, right brain, maybe, I don't know. But some people work because they have to. Some people work because they think they know what people want to see or hear or read or visit, and that it just is not really to me an interesting way to pursue things. I think the only thing I can really be true to is the fact that I want to do it. It's really the only thing. I have no expectation of being in a show at Alpha Art Gallery or anywhere else. that's not why I'm doing it, but there became a certain point where I didn't necessarily want to be an Emily Dickinson either, and have people only discover me once I've gone. That's my ego at work, I'm sure, but it's not really, I don't do it any more than to wake up in the morning and go like, oh, okay, what am I going to find today? Sometimes it's a little burden because I've set this goal of 3 images a day on Instagram. And there are times when it's like, no, not today. But then I have this probably OCD or something that propels me to do it. And sometimes actually that's when the best work comes out. When you're not aiming straight ahead, and it's like, oh my God, what did I do there? So the entertainment factor works its way back.
Yeah. It's wonderful. I think it's wonderfully put. It's really refreshing, I feel like.
Well, I just think it's true. Why would you? Your dad must do it. He must do it because he loves to do it, and know what he wants to be like, wow, to himself first. That's really cool. I like that. Yeah, I think the best people do that, and those that maybe have an idea of what they're doing ahead of time get that same feeling. It's just that they maybe have more satisfaction in a sense when they arrive at whatever it is that ends up being the thing they have done. Me, I have very few expectations. I don't even expect anybody to like him, to be honest with you. I really don't. And I'm always surprised when people do. And some people, I'm fortunate to say, have raved about some things. And it's like, what really? Well, I was just bored that day, which I don't mean to put it down either, but it really is the kind of the main motivator.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Life can be long and boring.
Yeah, and I think it's what's really cool about your work is that I think people can really feel that from it, can really feel like this exploring energy from it. It's nice, and it's accessible. I really, really enjoy it.
Well, thank you so much. That's so very nice of you to say.
Yeah. Well, those are all my questions for today. And
okay.
Thank you.
Take up again tomorrow when you have another list? No.
Yeah, we should keep going.
Yeah, right.
But it was so lovely speaking with you.
And you.
And I really hope that the exhibit. I wish I could be there for the exhibition.
I wish you could be there too. I'd love to meet you.
Yeah, well, but
I'm serious. You did prep me. Some of those questions were. It's just so well thought. You actually took the job you were asked to do, and you made something more of it than most people tend to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I had a wonderful time speaking with you.
And you.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.
Oh.
With the assistance of grants from organizations such as Amboy Bank, Magyar Bank, Johnson & Johnson, New Brunswick City Center, Middlesex County Cultural and Heritage Commission, Merck & Co., and the Bank of Princeton, Alpha Art is confident that all who come will leave with a greater appreciation of the arts and the gallery showcasing of a variety of artists.